Hi, my name is Jim Fisher. Welcome to The Third Way. This is my first video blog of The Third Way that I'm recording in my car as I'm driving home and stuck in traffic. And I tried recording the first episode a couple days ago, but it took me about 30 minutes, and apparently that's 2.2 gigs, and I could not upload it. So this is my first episode from my car, and I'm gonna record a few of these. I'm going to talk about libertarianism and the Austrian economics, and the reason for that, and the reason it's called The Third Way, is because I don't consider myself left. I don't consider myself right. I'm a libertarian, and I'm hoping to, entice people out there that are fed up with two-party politics and are looking for a third way. So, really quickly, I just wanted to touch upon the Austrian perspective, and I wanted to talk about the rich, because we keep hearing, from our current president that our rich, corporate jet owners need to chip in and help us out of this mess, and this just can't be all spending cuts. We need to also tax the rich. So the first point I wanted to make about corporations, when you tax corporations, is it's really an impossible thing to do, is to tax a corporation. Any wages that a president earns from that corporation is already taxed at the highest rate. To actually tax the corporation itself is actually taxing the consumer of whatever corporation that corporation produces. So, if you tax the power company or the oil companies or whatever, you're taxing consumers of those products. If you tax Coca-Cola, you're taxing consumers of Coca-Cola. There's no such thing as taxing a company or a corporation. They're going to make a profit, or they're not going to stay in business. That's just a simple fact. I wanted to use, for example, Andrew Carnegie, because he's kind of known as the second richest man in the world next to Rockefeller. And I wanted to use him as an example because he was a giant in the steel industry. He started a company that eventually led to U.S. Steel after it was sold to J.P. Morgan. I think it was around 1890 it was sold to J.P. Morgan. But the way he amassed his wealth, he started actually at a young age. He worked at a bobbin factory. He worked in the telegraph industry, worked his way up pretty quickly in the telegraph industry, and then eventually got into the steel industry. And that's really how he made most of his wealth. But he made it not just by making steel and somehow becoming a monopoly in the steel industry. We're always taught that monopolies are bad, and monopolies are bad if they're a government-sponsored monopoly that's keeping out competition through regulation. But in a free market, a company that becomes a monopoly in a free market, or close to a monopoly in a free market, can only become that way doing one thing, and that's making the rest of us more wealthy. Now, let me explain that. So, in order for Carnegie to do what he did and become basically a monopoly in the steel industry, and he actually wasn't a monopoly. There was a secondary tycoon that he ended up merging with to make U.S. Steel. But to become as big as he was in the steel industry, the way he did it was to make steel 90% cheaper than it was currently being made. He came up with a revolutionary process that now could make steel 90% cheaper than the previous process that was out there. So what does that do? What does that do for the economy? What does that do for the overall wealth of other people besides Carnegie? If people were buying steel at 90% more money than they were until Carnegie invented this process, did he make the rest of us more wealthy, or did he make the rest of us less wealthy? And the answer is obviously the former. He made us more wealthy because anybody that wanted to build something out of steel could now purchase it for far less cost. So what did that do for jobs? You look at all the skyscrapers in Chicago and New York and all the major cities, those sprang up shortly after that time, and they sprang up because of the price of steel. How many jobs did that create for the rest of us? If a farmer, can farm enough food for himself to eat, but then develops a new machine or some type of tractor that can now make him wealthy by being able to farm so much food that he can now sell it to other people for far less than they were buying it. Did he make other people more wealthy or less wealthy? And that's just an economic fact. And it's an economic fact if you listen to the Austrian perspective, not if you listen to Keynesian economics. There's not some finite amount of wealth out there. Wealth is actually created. So, through Carnegie's process, he made America a far more wealthy nation than it was. Not single-handedly, all kinds of inventions did at the time, but the Industrial Revolution actually made us more wealthy through inventions that made machinery, which is capital, that produced things that took more time to produce more. Previously, it took more of our labor to produce these things previously. So people that are rich and people that get rich, and it doesn't matter what industry it is, can only do so by making the rest of us more wealthy. This is an economic fact. If you want to choose to go through the Obama's view and think of it as there's just this finite amount of wealth out there and the wealthy are hogging it all and not sharing with the rest of us, that's a fallacy. Wealth is created. Wealth cannot be hogged. You cannot get rich without offering some type, in a free market anyway, you cannot get rich without offering something that other people want. An exchange will not happen unless it benefits both parties. In a free market, it won't anyway. An exchange in socialism is just that. It's one person winning and one person losing. But in a free market, an exchange won't happen unless it benefits both parties. That's Mises's law of marginal utility. You can't get an exchange unless two parties benefit. So in order for somebody to get rich in a free market, he can only do that by by giving somebody an exchange that will benefit them more than previous exchanges with somebody else. And that's how he becomes rich. So that's all I wanted to say. One other real point quickly is raising taxes on anybody, whether it's the wealthy, or raising taxes to think that you're going to accumulate more income for the government is a fallacy in itself. The government has taken in about 16% of GDP, whether the tax rate has been at 90% or the tax rate has been at 22%. It doesn't matter. The percentage of GDP is always 16, and the highest it's ever been is around 21% under Bill Clinton, which was very short-lived, and that was because of the internet boom that took place. It only lasted a few months at that high of a rate. So when you tax corporations at a higher rate, or you tax anybody that owns capital at a higher rate, their behavior changes, and it changes due to uncertainty and due to for other reasons. But the actual percentage of the gross product that you can take in is fairly finite. So, President Obama out there telling us that we're going to take in more money by increasing the taxes on our wealthy that are making over $250,000 is in itself a fallacy. And when you tell him this point, he'll argue back, but it's more fair. So it's about fairness to him. It's not about generating more income. We cannot generate more income by increasing the taxes on the wealthy. And not only that, we actually hurt the rest of us, because when the wealthy must give more of their income to the government, not only do they create less jobs, but now that that lack of ability to create more wealth hurts the economy far more than it could help it. So I guess that's all I wanted to say quickly for today, and I'm gonna post a lot of these quick blogs on YouTube, and I'll put the post up on Facebook. Please look out for them. I'm going to explain libertarianism and Austrian economics at length. I'm going to try to do it in quick bite-sized pieces like this. So signing off for now, and have a good night.